I don't mind mentioning a
That's
few.
your specialty.
I don't mind mentioning. The one thing that I want to emphasize about oil right now, and this is something that I want people to know generally, that we started to produce oil in this country in December of 2019. So we've been producing oil in this country for 4 years. But we have only spent oil money in the economy for 2 years. We haven't spent oil money. So the first year we actually spent oil money in the country was in 2022 and last year, 2023. The first year was 600 million. The second year was $1 billion US. I think we probably would have earned about 3.6 billion in terms of revenue, because there's an automatic savings as part of our sovereign wealth fund, which we put in place shortly after we got in, repealing the previous one. Because there's a simple formula for people to understand how we are going to spend oil money in the economy and how much is going to be saved. So there's an automatic savings that as oil revenue builds up, a percentage builds up as well, and the percentages increase as you get more and more revenue.
Understood.
So what's important for people to know is that we've only spent 2 years of oil money in the economy. The revenue in the country is not huge at the moment, but it builds up over time, and not a long period of time. In the medium term, you'll see a quite dramatic increase in the revenue that is flowing into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. But it also means that we get an opportunity to spend more into the economy. The reality is, and what does that translate into, is that I am extremely confident that the country's future is very bright. But it has to be managed well.
Well said.
Now, that's why when we're making these decisions now about
infrastructure,
number one, infrastructure, but also how you are spending on the what's called recurrent expenditure. Now, in a budget, it's divided into, in Guyana, and I know about Guyana, I can't say about all other places, but in Guyana, our budget is divided into two areas. One is called recurrent expenditure, and the other one is called capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is anything like, building roads, building bridges, building schools, building hospitals, building community grounds, stadiums, housing schemes, all those kind of things. Very important. Anything to do with investment, that's capital. On the recurrent side is things like electricity, rates and taxes, printery, salaries, all of emoluments, all of those things fall onto the recurrent side. Now, it's important, especially at an early stage when you find oil, and this is based on decades and decades of studying experiences with countries that started to produce oil, is that you make the investment on your infrastructure and that you gradually build up on your recurrent expenditure, like your salaries and things that you have to keep spending on all the time. So what I can say is that in the medium term, everybody should expect that their quality of life will improve, not just gradually, but improve better than almost all of the other countries that are in a similar bracket. So I'm very confident about the direction that we're going in as a country and the decisions that we're making now, which is that we don't want to save all of the money, which is quote unquote like the Norwegian model, right? Having said that, what's important to note too is that even Norway, which is the Norwegian model, the money, they didn't start saving in their sovereign wealth fund until 25 years after. Until 25 years of spending oil money in their economy. We've already started to do that. So we've already started to put away money for a rainy day. But at the same time, we're making the critical investments that we need to make now, so that if in the future oil disappears, that we've already have built up the infrastructure that will catapult and catalyze a lot of economic activities in the country. So that's what I want people to know, that it has to be managed well, and it's currently being managed well, so that it doesn't disappear in the future and it doesn't turn out to be a curse. Recently, you saw the president have an interview on Hard Talk where he was able to
dispel,
I would say, disabuse any questions that other countries or persons from other countries may have about whether what we're doing is not beneficial for us. What I want to emphasize here is that a lot of those countries too that went by the wayside, that they didn't have a good experience with oil, a lot of them, their officials, they were found with duffer bags of money inside their personal properties, and that kind of operations were happening. So a lot of people are talking now about, you know, the oil deal, which we always were critical about, that we should have gotten more when you had the opportunity to renegotiate. You should take that opportunity so that you can get more for the country. But at the same time, you can't eliminate bad decisions and selfish decisions that, when I say selfish in that situation, corrupt decisions that destroyed the opportunities for those countries. There's an example that I can use, because some of my friends, when we went to university, they would tell me about some of the dictators that they had. So one of my roommates at the university I went to in England, he said there was a dictator that they had. His name was Abacha. Apparently they had a coup d'etat and took over the government. He had stole, their best estimate is $5 billion in the 90s, 80s and 90s. $5 billion. Now, no amount of good oil deal will save you from that type of operations. What we did in this country, what we passed since we came back into government, was that any failure to declare a single dollar that came from our oil revenue, that the minister with responsibility for finance, they get a criminal, there's a criminal offense attached to that, and I think it's 10 years jail sentence if they fail to declare that coming from our oil revenue. So that's one. Two, every single part of additional revenue that comes from oil, when I say additional revenue, we receive the revenue, but if we are spending it, it has to be spent through the budgetary process, which means that you have to debate. For 2 weeks, we spent in the National Assembly every single day from 10 till 12 o'clock at night, 10 a.m. till 12 o'clock at night, sometimes longer. We spent 2 weeks non-stop having the scrutiny from the opposition, examining sector by sector. You present your speeches, they present their speeches, they get to say what they want to say, and they get to go through line by line to identify areas where people can where you're spending money, if you shouldn't be spending money. And then there's a public procurement commission that flows from a procurement process. And it's also important, I want to just mention this last point here, because it's important that people understand how the procurement process works. And that's why I believe that it's a very good process, having only been exposed to it coming into this position, having been appointed the minister with responsibility for culture, youth, and sport. But at the same time, we do a lot of projects, community grounds, stadiums, whatever, national stadium. We do a lot of projects. So when you hear, for example, a contract is $100 million. So a contractor is awarded a contract for $100 million to build a road or a school or something like that. they don't actually receive $100 million just because they were awarded a contract for $100 million, having gone through the tendering process, right? Okay. So it's you've gone through the tendering process. It means that you have to submit your documents, you have to put in your bids. It's based on these rates. There's an evaluation process, and then the person who is the best responsive is the one that gets it. So I've passed that stage in terms of procurement. But in terms of the actual implementation of the project, even though you're awarded this contract, so you sign a contract saying, this is what you have to build, this is the amount, this is the start date, this is the end date. You don't receive a check for $100 million. You receive a mobilization sum, which is 15%. So that's the first payment you receive, 15%, which is a mobilization money. In this situation, it's $15 million. Every single penny that goes into that project after that is your money that you have to put up front as a contractor. And then you only receive money subsequently after either the project is finished, or you can get an interim payment if the project is large enough. For small projects, you won't get an interim payment. But if it's large enough, you can ask for an interim payment, and they have to go and measure the works that you have completed.
To determine how much you can get.
To determine how much you can get so that you're not receiving money in excess of what you have spent. And even that 15% that you get advanced, there is what's called a bond, which means that government money for that sum, the government money is protected for that sum that is advanced. Again, a cost to the contractor. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because many times when you hear that the contract is whatever, a large sum, whatever it is, the contractor is the one who has to put forward his money first. And then after the engineers come from the respective ministries or the region, they have to come and measure. So let's use a simple explanation of a project so that people understand. Let's say a walkway. They have to measure the thickness, the width, and the length. And when they do that, they get to say, well, what is the price of that amount of work that you have completed? And then you can get an interim payment, but it would never exceed what you have already spent. Which means that from a procurement process and public expenditure process, it means that government money, the system that we have, is fairly robust to protect government money, so that with all of the projects that you see happening already, it's not a situation where the contractor receives the money and runs away with the money and the project doesn't happen. That might happen in other countries, and I know of countries where that happens. But if that happens in this country, it means that there's a procurement breach. Right. That means that somebody has done something that they're not supposed to do, and that's where the Auditor General picks them up, and they have to account to the Public Procurement Commission, and also at the PAC, which is the Public Accounts Committee at the Parliament. So it's a fairly robust public system that exists to protect government money. And the reason why I want to explain that to people is because we're coming into this revenue now. It's starting now, and it's going to continue to build up. But people need to be, one, aware. They need to have the knowledge of how the system works, because they can also use that to their advantage. But also as a citizen and somebody who wants the best for the country, whether it's myself or you or anybody else who's listening and across the country, which we all want. We all want that. We want to know that the system that exists helps us to use the money in the best possible way where the government money is protected.
And you're going to be having these types of conversations at your community outreach?
Every single one. Every single one. So I speak about this so that I get an opportunity to explain to people who may not know. They have these kind of concerns, and people raise these questions. They raise lots of things. The oil deal, they raise, you know, why are we doing this, or why are we doing that, or how is this project going, or they may see people write in the newspapers, and that's something else that I want to explain to people, that as you get closer to November of 2025, when we're going to be having our election, is that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try to cause disturbances in the sense of rumor mongering, right? Creating this sense that bad things are happening. And if they find something, for example, let's say there's a crack in a road of the thousands of projects that was done, right? That were done. They'll say a crack in the road. They say that's corruption, right? But really and truly, the contractor didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he just has to come and correct his job. You know, the job that he did. Mm-hmm. So, we're going to get there. Yeah. We are moving rapidly. This has been a phenomenal period, an amazing period to witness in the country. The country is going to get better for everyone. And one of the important things that I say when it comes to the investment that we make in infrastructure, I call it the great equalizer. The great equalizer, because whether you're rich or poor, you're all benefiting from that bridge that's being built. And all those people who are receiving house lots, the tens of thousands, we've already distributed over 30,000 house lots already. Mm-hmm. All of those house lots are subsidized. The price that they pay for that house lot is not the real price on the market. If they were to turn around and sell those house lots or houses, because you know you can buy built houses as well. Mm-hmm. If they were to turn around and sell those houses or house lots tomorrow, if they receive it today, tomorrow, let alone leaving it for the future, tomorrow, they'll get a higher price. I'm not telling them to do that because they're not supposed to sell. There's a part in the contract and the covenant that says you're not supposed to sell for a period of time. I know some people have been trying to get around that by having irrevocable powers of attorneys. I'm telling people, don't do that. You will be far richer by holding on to it in the future. So hold on to your house lots, I can tell you that. But all of those house lots that we distributed there, it's billions of dollars that we spend to clear those lands, mm-hmm. and to build the roads or to create the infrastructure that's there. Those lands existed all the time. We didn't create those lands. The lands existed. But in order to make them accessible, we had to make the investment to clear the area. We had to do the surveying, build the infrastructure, putting the telephone the lines, the lamp poles, and the drainage and infrastructure that's there. It doesn't come for free, right? So it requires investment, and that's one of the ways where government is helping to keep the cost of housing, mm-hmm. at an affordable level for Guyanese.
Minister, thanks for coming in today. The door's always open when you're ready to come back. It's been a ball having this conversation with you.